Welcome to Two Hearts Dance and Yoga's Heart to Heart series. My name is Leanne Barber, owner and movement creator at Two Hearts Dance and Yoga, and it's my pleasure to bring you some inspiration during this time. It is my absolute pleasure to bring you Gabrielle DeBurke, the founder, lead instructor, program director of Dragon Spirit Arts, as well as the owner of NUE Arts Gallery in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, which is connected to that space. Gabrielle and her husband partner on these spaces that support local, international craftspeople and indigenous artists through their art gallery and empower people to dive deeper into an engaged personal practice of the internal/martial arts that have created a community-based studio space that's inviting and accessible for all to practice. Dragon Spirit Arts offers group classes, private lessons, workshops, retreats, teacher training, continuing education in yoga, Tai Chi and Qigong, as well as other moving meditations. Many of her performance projects sister together in the internal and martial arts forms. And with her world dance and spoken word poetry and movement theater presentations, she's an all-around artist and master mover, and it's my pleasure to have her today. Thank you so much.
Intro.
Yeah, I mean, you just do all the things, and I admire that so much about you. Before we get into hearing more about what you do, tell us how things have been generally, during this time as we all continue to, do our virtual movement and work together.
Well, as a business owner, it's been a little bit challenging to figure out a new method. Definitely rely upon the in-person, so that has been interesting. But also new things have opened up, which I hadn't really thought about doing before, partially because I guess of time. Time is a whole new thing as a mother of two really young children. That is, had more of it in some ways, it seems like, before this. So, but my point about in my own business space of holding the studio together and keeping it going while this has been happening, it took me a week to just get my act together to go online. So that was okay, here you go. So I closed for about a week when I got the real understanding that I needed to just close because that was too many variables and uncertainty that I wasn't really prepared to take on, telling other people it was okay. People were like, no, don't close. So that was a little bit of a challenge to negotiate, but something just sort of dropped for me and I knew I had to just take a step back. So for about a week, I did some online trainings about Zoom and teaching on Facebook and Instagram and so on. But so far this has been Zoom has been the thing I ended up going with. And that was kind of new. I'd done video work for throughout my life, just not really for the stuff I was working with. So I had to kind of set up a whole new way of offering it through my studio space. Kind of oh no, what do I do? Yeah. But then it also was well, I kind of have to mobilize because there's a lot of people who are counting on me. And I felt if I could stretch myself, it would be helpful. They say in the yogic arts, often, or even in the martial arts and internal arts, the things that we don't like or the things that we have ambivalence about sometimes are the things we need to work on more. I mean, sometimes it's oh no, don't go so deep, bad choice. Your body's telling you not to do that. But other times it seems oh, I don't know how to do that. So this wasn't an option to I felt to steer away from that. I had to figure it out. So, and I have not by all means figured it out totally, but I've been helped in the community. Some of my theater friends came and gave me a full lighting rig in here. So it was actually almost a little bit too much at first, where you were kind of blinded. I felt I was in a theater, so I had to eventually I had to use the wisdom of almost almost feeling like I had to wear some sunglasses and just be like, okay, less is more. Some things online, I was able to teach some classes that like were maybe more like what I have done with my dancer crew. This is sort of a different demographic of people who are in person in the community I teach in Lansdowne than where I taught in Philly or Toronto or other places I've traveled. So it's like an opportunity to be like, oh, let me just open this up and have some creative fun with it, where sometimes you can get stuck in like what is expected or what you perceive as the expectation of what you're going to teach. So that was kind of fun to do it online and try to figure that out. Hope that people follow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered that or if that was just like a long.
That's perfect. I mean, the thing with you, and the thing that I admire most about you, have such a wonderful kind of diverse community that you do serve. And the fact that you said, you know, that people are depending on me, so I kind of have to do something. It really just speaks to, you know, the community that you've created, and the people are there to come together. And this is the time, you know, where, you know, someone like you is needed, and they're looking to you to kind of help them through this problem, help them through their own wellness. And, you know, you're doing a wonderful job at it. I don't think anyone has figured any of this out, so it's completely fine sharing that with us. You know, you have a very extensive movement background. I'm first going to start with your dance background. Tell us a little bit about your dance background and how that passion continued to grow as you grew up.
One of the things that was a little bit of a struggle when I was in school for theater at Temple was that there wasn't a real link between the theater department, the music department, and the dance department. So I sort of created a link on a level of like how I brought those other interests into my own ability to graduate, like using the credits from other departments, taking classes that fulfilled core requirements but were also of interest to me in dance that were more like my exploratory concentration. So that sort of speaks to like my way anyway. But it was interesting because for my theater requirements, we definitely weren't necessarily like said you have to go out and do dance, but I was like, well, that is for me something that I really need to investigate. And as a dancer, I was definitely more of like a street dancer, community club. Like the communities that I was involved in growing up was where I danced. So when I was in school at Temple, it was like an opportunity for me to really study dance on another level, which I hadn't really done before, with a more organized format. And so I was being encouraged by a lot of my friends who were, you know, more ingrained in the dance community in terms of like, they would encourage me because of my power, my ability to be an improvisational dancer. And I was like, wow, you can like remember all those moves you did. I usually just go with the flow. So there was like a thing I wanted to learn and get out of more. So there was like a mutual respect a lot of times where I had friends who I danced with at like University Arts. They brought me in to do some dance there. And it was funny, the woman who was bringing me in was like, I brought you in because you're not a like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm like, but I would like to learn more about that. So there was like a draw there for me to get a better understanding of how to like incorporate that. So I'd say like with Temple, there was a lot of like awesome experience with my studies in African dance. I also had studied capoeira later on. I was looking for martial art when I was in college, and I found a Korean martial art called Hapkido. And so for me, my dance choreography, even when I created things, was definitely steeped in different disciplines. From Middle Eastern dance, I'd studied with a woman who taught Middle Eastern dance and had like a grave injury to her body that was basically healed through dance. I was doing some performance work and looking for someone to come in on a project I had with the Fringe, and this woman who I was dancing with in my last year of Temple she was a Haitian, she had a Haitian background, and she studied a dance called Dianpulu, which is also like this healing dance for the woman and the body. So I think that I just got really interested because I felt that already, this like way that dance can like heal and keep you connected. So you're have that resource that I think I always wanted to come back to. In my last couple of years of college at Temple, I was studying Kung Fu. And so the movement disciplines of Kung Fu totally went with like hip hop for me. So, I mean, I walked into this, I was at a venue dancing with my friends. My friends brought me to this, and they were doing a performance, and they were a martial arts school called the Spirit Wind Internal Arts. And when I went to go see their performance, and I was dancing in the other room, I came to see their performance. They were acting like animals, like they were acting like monkeys, and they were doing stuff that looked like hip hop to me. And thought it was capoeira, but it was Kung Fu. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And they were doing all the 5 animals. So for me, there was this connection between the things that interested me in terms of like conscious hip hop and like a conscious way of moving. So I was like, I am going to come to class with you guys. And that sort of started this whole thing with like the Kung Fu realm, and it integrated with all my dance. It definitely supported all the dance because there are different movement styles, different animals, the really graceful, slow stuff that we call Qigong or Qigong is like really, really airy and slow and relaxed. And it's got this like ethereal quality. And for me, doing that in Tai Chi was like, wow, this is really hard to slow down. So I guess I could speak to like, for me, movement, martial arts, all of that. When I started like really like getting into that when I was in school, it really helped me because it was really a hard thing for me to focus. But when I was like doing my dance, when I was like really finding the things that help keep me connected, I did well. I did way better in school. I was able to like keep it connected. All the different things I was studying were like all supporting me in this theatrical interest, if that makes sense.
You have these different movement qualities, and they all kind of come together to help you be a better mover in general. It's funny to think that I don't know, I have a couple and maybe they're watching this later, but I have a couple of students that I was teaching yoga to from the Kung Fu Academy, and they had never danced or had any kind of like dance movement. And it's funny for you, to say that the Kung Fu and the dance kind of intertwined was helpful for you and helpful for you expressing yourself. So hopefully that will encourage them to take some dance classes. But a bit more about your martial arts background. I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure. So, I mean, I really started that when I was in college. So around 20, 21, 22, I was in Hapkido, which is a Korean style of martial art, connected to Aikido. So I was really getting into that. I was also studying Ashtanga yoga at the same time. And that was definitely like during a time where I just like really needed a way to express and release like excess energy, excess fiery energy. So for me, that was really helpful. I had also studied Taekwondo, but for whatever reason, I just resonated into the Hapkido. And then when I started going to that school, plus they offered the yoga, they offered a variation of yoga that is steeped in the same tradition called Taoist yoga, where it's like Qigong practices. So in that school, I started studying, this is all of what was offered in the school. I studied the Kung Fu, northern style, mostly northern style long fist, the animals, like the crane, the snake, the tiger, the monkey, the dragon, and so on. I also practiced Tai Chi, Bagua, and Qigong. So it was pretty well-rounded. Like I I got a lot out of it, but it definitely drove home the thing about needing to study the yoga, because of like yoga and Qigong are the more soft, soothing, regenerative practices. And my teacher definitely was like, yeah, you know, you keep doing all this hard style, you're going to be crippled by the time you're my age. So you need to make sure that you're doing something to counterbalance the hard style practices. So, I mean,
That makes
I
sense.
also, you know, that was like my thing was the Kung Fu, and with that school, I should say, Spirit Wind Internal Arts were all of those different movement forms. Um,
Cool.
if I was to show you a spectrum, for those who aren't familiar, where I'll just try to clarify a spectrum between like hard style and soft style. Kung Fu is over here, right? It's all the martial arts and things that you see that are more for fighting or self-defense, right? Disciplining the body on like a more external level. All the way over here is the Qigong. It's very internal, it's very meditative, it's very soft, or yin. The Kung Fu is very yang, right? And then in between would be the Tai Chi, the Bagua. They are the movements that are in between that kind of bring them both together. I know people like kind of made fun of me when I was like 24, and they were like, why do you do Tai Chi? You know, why have you been doing this so long? And I'm like, because I love the fact that it challenges me to move slow and mindfully.
Yeah.
So I definitely have stuck with the Tai Chi over the years, and the Qigong. I had gone into a different martial art, but still connected the Kung Fu elements and the animal forms with capoeira after that. So I had steeped myself in capoeira practice with a school, also local in the Philly area. And I really love that too. It kind of is interesting because it's like the monkey. I told you I was attracted to the monkey Kung Fu that I saw. And something with like the rolling around with capoeira, the flipping around is very like monkey-like. So I studied with that group for many years too. But as I got a little bit older, I had to sort of chill out on some of it, and like it can be hard on your body. So like maybe about 5 years ago or something, 5 or 6 years ago, I sort of like decided I was going to chill on some of the hard stuff and just stay focused on the Qigong and the Tai Chi, yoga, still dancing and so on. But hopefully it gives you some info on the martial arts and where I went with that. And if those of you are not familiar with capoeira, right, it's a dance, it's a martial art, it's coming from Brazil, it's this Afro-Brazilian movement form, hidden by the slaves to protect the art form, originating from Angola in Africa to like very, very ancient fighting form that they really brought into a dance to continue to practice it. And it's one of the reasons it lived, because it had this dance-like quality. It like was able to be maintained and not, you know, brushed or pushed out of the culture. So I'm lucky to have had a great master tutor who taught us from the Asgabi group in Philly. He actually, that group is really come up, and it's wonderful. They're the folks, some of the lead folks helping to bring the Brazilian Day like to Philly. So.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for breaking that down, like the whole, you know, spectrum that you kind of showed as far as like what the kind of harder hitting movement as opposed to the softer, more meditative state. That's very helpful for those of us who aren't as familiar with the martial arts. So thank you so much for doing that. Creating Dragon Spirit Arts and is it NUE Art Gallery or NUE?
So NUE is actually my husband. That's the name of his business. We definitely we're doing this together because it just made sense to open up a brick and mortar location where his gallery and my studio could both be in one place as a way to connect what we do. Originally, Dragon Spirit Arts is the name of the school, the company that I created some years back, maybe back around the late 2000s or something like that. And it was really kind of all encompassing, performance artwork, arts and education, the martial arts and various movements. So that was pretty cool to have like figured out finally what the name was because it took some time. But the dragon spirit, I'll just speak to that for me. Since I had this resonation with the Chinese martial arts and the I Ching and various more mystical elements surrounding the traditions, when I found that I was born in the year of the dragon, this inspired me. And I always resonated with this dragon form. So for me, as a dragon spirit, I felt like I needed to share these arts that I'm connected to or that I feel through. And then I decided to open a place. I would say it had been since 2012 or 13. I was thinking about doing this, in part because I was a little bit disillusioned with some of the yoga studio environments that I was coming to experience. I mean, I was really fortunate to have had like a really diverse, like all bodies crew of like people when I first started teaching in Toronto, where like I was a little intimidated by teaching all dancers who were like professional dancers. But like I said, there was this mutual respect and like uplifting thing that I was given in that opportunity when I was living there. It was a group called the Womb. It was a women's performance art collective that had a lot of men actually involved in it. But it was called the Womb, so because it was all ladies holding down this awesome dance collective and performance collective. And I would say that it started as me teaching in different places, and then it became something years later that I realized I needed to open my own place because it wasn't always like that, and I wanted more of that kind of, I don't know, that experience teaching there. Places I trained in Philly, like the Kumquat, which was like more of a dance studio, more of an open environment. I don't know how else to put it. I wanted to be more than one thing. I didn't want it to just be in a strict box. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to open up this place. And opening a brick and mortar location felt was very grounding. And it was definitely my children that truly inspired that, because when I had them, it was like, you're not going to go off running here and over there. You need to stay here for a little bit. And if this is where you're going to be, and I chose to be here in Delco to like near my family to raise them. So that was definitely like, okay, now it's time. Where for years I wasn't ready, and neither was my husband. But when I was like, I'm going to open up a place, he was like, oh, cool. Like, let's do a gallery. I want to do a gallery space.
Yeah.
So we did. And for him, he sells indigenous arts. He supports different artists all over the place by selling their wares. He has art that he creates himself too. But definitely he feels like his role is to procure and work with artists and get it out there. From jewelry to sculpture, and he just loves it. Like, he has a great eye for it. Interestingly enough, he was like working in the auto industry. He wasn't really that into it, but he found meditation in doing it. And then he got laid off, and it was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And a lot of people were saying, you have a great eye for, like, you always find this beautiful art. Like, maybe you should think about doing something with that. And so that is sort of how his journey like evolved into opening this space. And he usually, under different circumstances right now, but he usually vends, goes to antique shows and different kinds of festivals to get his friends also work out there.
Really neat. That's really cool. And it's amazing that you have that space that kind of brings all of that together. You walk into your, you see all of the art and you see the beautiful work and the jewelry, and then you're led into the yoga space. It really is uplifting in every way. So I love everything about it. Really cool. Yeah. So how do you manage offering so many different styles of classes, from meditation to your martial arts to the yoga private lessons and the yoga teacher trainings, which is amazing that you have the continuing education there for yoga teachers. I love that your studio brings all of that together, but how do you manage all of that?
It's a little tough because I'm not at a stage where I'm ready to really, well, hire someone unless I get the grants that I'm working on. We'll see. This is an interesting time for that. So I've taken on a lot of it myself. So it's hard sometimes, but I have to just do whatever I can do to get it together. I mean, I definitely had a period of time where I was really sitting with all of the things I wanted to offer, and it took time to structure. So for me, it was like create the structure and then expand from that. And so when I opened the space, I was really just focusing. This is my 3-year anniversary, COVID 3-year anniversary, but it was, I was gonna need to get these basic things that I would offer that would sustain it in place before really starting to expand into the teacher trainings, which was really the next stage. Because I knew I needed to build the community that would be supported by the ongoing classes to create that stability that I would need through membership. I worked for a lot of places, and one thing I had learned, like working for a lot of other people, was it's really hard to survive on just your ongoing classes. Like you need to have other stuff that involves community engagement. And so I knew the teacher trainings was going to be that. And then supporting people who were already teaching, which is like totally my jam. I'm like, oh, because I'm just that personality. I feel like I like to help facilitate in that way. So I didn't even know I was going to become a teacher, honestly. I had no clue that I was going to be doing that. But it ended up coming through the performing arts that I started to teach movement and theater, and then yoga and the martial arts work. But definitely creating the structure and then expanding from there. That is definitely how I started. I got it all started. And now I'm kind of expanding into this world of the virtual offerings. And it's interesting, people now like who I've known forever who live in Canada or on the West Coast or in other states or like hours from here are like, oh my God, I could take your training now.
That's the
How about that? Okay, so it's like a new world, right? I'm trying out different things. So it's easier if you already have that structure in place than if you're like reaching in so many different directions without a like place to move from. So that center helps a lot.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. And, you mentioned having multiple things, all those things, memberships or creating the community. I know you've offered like different performance opportunities in your space as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of those kind of community events that you were doing before COVID, and hopefully that will come back?
Yeah. So actually it was maybe every time we had an anniversary here, that's sort of how we started in the studio space. But I'll talk about something previous to that first, which I've been doing for like 12 years. And I think the agenda is to continue it. And we're going to try to do a virtual thing in September, I believe. But it's called Poetry in Motion. And this is something where I got offered a residency through the Foundation Arts at the Rotunda in University City to hold this community, like free to the community performance event. And it was so cool because it was like an opportunity for me to bring all these different people that I knew who worked in various genres of movement and music and theater and dance together and offer it to the community and be able to actually, like, I would receive a budget to pay them, and that's like, yay, artists can be compensated, woohoo! Like, this is important. And I mean, I worked as a professional performer, and like, you need that to sustain your existence. So like, that was really cool to be able to like do that. And it took, time over the years to develop it. But that's definitely where I was before I opened up my own brick and mortar place. And like I said, I kind of had to get a lot of things set up before I started working with doing like performances here. But whenever we'd have like a anniversary event or an open house, I would bring in friends from the community to facilitate in that way, to come like sing, dance, and do like hula hoops or flow arts through the different communities that I've been involved in. So that kind of started up more officially last year with the Delco Arts Week.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
And we're going to try to do it again this year, but an online variation. So I'm not going to say try. I'm like, we're going to do it this year.
Gonna do it. Awesome, cool.
This year, but it might be like a merging of poetry and motion and Delco Arts at Dragon Spirit Art Studio. So we're gonna. I'm trying to negotiate that with the powers that be supporting us, so that we're going to be able to do that again on a more official level. But that's been cool. I mean, I really like having that kind of energy in the space. I tried to find a space that was big enough that you could dance in it, that you could move in it. Because I've worked in like places where there was a yoga class and you were like crammed in and there wasn't a lot of room. So I was definitely took my time to find a place slightly off the beaten path from the center of Lansdowne, but definitely I have a wonderful landlord and I am happy that we have this like floor to move around in, plenty of space. So I think that everyone, when we have the performance events, feels pretty welcome here too. It's like low pressure situation. I try to incorporate the open mic, or I call it the open stage factor too, from poetry in motion to the events that I've done here. So there's someone just feeling inspired, they could get up and like do a little thing without judgment, right? Because I feel like everybody can dance. They might not be ready to perform in front of people, but like everyone has something to contribute. And I think that's part of that whole like community circle or the grotto, like where the community is like engaging each other with the things that keep us smiling, right? Keep that heart energy low.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that that's coming, and we'll look forward to it, and I'll definitely spread the message. Hopefully some of my students and community get inspired to
get Leanne in here to do a ditty.
Yes, I would love to. Awesome. Thank you so much. My last question for you, really, what keeps you going through everything? What motivates you to keep pushing forward?
I would say that my children are super big part of it. Also, like people who express that they are, their gratitude for what is being offered, the teachers in the community. I mean, like, it's nice to be thought of as like a cool person to work with. I mean, that's the message I've gotten. And so that makes me feel good because that's what I would want to be. I try to like have that conversation with the teachers. Like, I'm not like your boss. I am like just here facilitating this and I'm asking you to join me in it. For the students, I feel like they express their gratitude. And my kids are like reminding me always about like what really matters in terms of like playfulness. Like for me, playfulness is like what keeps us from getting too serious, that we forget that spark or that thing. And I used to work with kids in arts and education for years. It's a whole different thing having children of your own, but it's still that thing that like drew me to work with young people, like dancing and teaching theater. Like I just love the way that the spark would go off and they'd find their dance move, they'd show their dance piece that they've made after we learned the choreography or we learned the technique, right? If we're doing theater or whatever it was, music, that like reminds me of when I was like little and not taking myself too serious. And as like an adult, like definitely adulting with a brick and mortar location, it's good to be reminded that like while I have a lot of expectations on me that require me to pay rent and like stay on top of insurance and all these things, that I might have more fun if I can remember to like laugh at myself and
find the things that you enjoy, and whether that's yoga or martial arts or dance or anything that's like expression, creativity, those kinds of things, that's what we need right now.
thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to have you, and I really look forward to, continuing to be a part of your community and doing all the, yoga classes and the different performances you have coming up. I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks so much for your time. On behalf of Two Hearts Dance and Yoga, thank you, Gabrielle. You're the best.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.